Welcome, everyone, to Enchanted Inside the Life of Spiritual Leaders and Entrepreneurs, where we're learning what it's really like to do this work, how each of these leaders can help you move forward towards the life and work that you were meant to do, and how it's possible for all of us to lead truly enchanted lives. I'm your host, Kathy Forrest, founder of Celestial Forest Institute, and I am so excited to be here today with my friend and colleague, Irene Chong. Welcome, Irene.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you for inviting me, for having me here. And thank you to the audience who's watching this.
Irene is the founder of Alignment Journeys, a business that was born out of a desire to fill the gaps in knowledge that aren't readily available in conventional education systems. Through the Aligned Woman's Way, an art of creating space that fosters and facilitates feminine flow, Irene teaches women how to tap into and access their innate intuition and wisdom, the inner wellspring from which beauty and ease naturally flow. Irene is on a mission to empower heart-centered women to shine their authentic radiance and beauty. As coach, creative, and healer, she works with her clients to craft and curate every aspect of their lives so they get to live the masterpiece that they dream of. I love that. And I love your topic, Irene. Soul, beauty, alchemy. Make space for your success. So let's just dive in. As spiritual entrepreneurs, why is it so important for us to make space to tend our inner lives?
Thank you for that question, Kathy, and for such a beautiful introduction. So let me see. I feel that the great thing about going into your own business, and I think you'll agree with me here, is that it is yours. It is all yours. So that is a prospect that is both exciting, liberating, and it can also be absolutely terrifying. So there's this freedom and creativity to do exactly what you want. At the same time, there can also be immense pressure and stress because, maybe you're afraid to screw up and get it wrong. And because it is your business and it's so precious to you, it can oftentimes feel like there is more at stake. So already, that is one challenge right there that I think a lot of spiritual entrepreneurs may face. And if you don't manage your energy levels well, it's not going to be long till you feel depleted and drained. And so if you want your business to be sustainable, which is, I imagine when you went into it in the first place, it's because you had a vision, a clear calling. So you want to be able to keep going. And then another thing that I found is that every time you expand, and in this case, like when you step into becoming a spiritual entrepreneur, you want to be in full integrity with the offerings that you're putting out. And so that makes it super important that you do the inner work first to prepare and get you ready for the growth. Because there's going to be a lot of expansion that's going to come as part of your business journey. So speaking for myself, I grew up with a lot of family trauma around money and security. And so becoming an entrepreneur, having my own business, like that was the furthest thing from what I envisioned for my life. So I encountered a lot of resistance around this. At the same time, there was also a very strong calling. So, and this is something that I found in other women as well that I've worked with. There is this push and there's this pull. There's this inner conflict that takes place. And so I'm sure, and maybe the audience who's watching this, I think you might resonate as well. There are these moments when you desire something with your whole heart. You want something with every fiber of your being. And somehow you end up sabotaging yourself. So I realized that that was actually what was happening to me because there was a misalignment somewhere. And so it showed up in, like things like procrastination, not daring to put myself out there, becoming overcome by the demons of like self-doubt. And there were all these limiting beliefs around worth and visibility. Very real struggles that I think a business owner who is just stepping out may face. So even though, by that time, when I started my business, I'd attained a lot of qualifications, I was stuck in this loop of getting more training, thinking I'll be ready when I got the next certification and the next. And then the problem was that I never began. So as a result of all these challenges that I experienced, I came to realize that, and I think this is true for anyone, whether you're in business or not, every time you reach your growth edge, it's so important to receive support because you're at your edge and you want to expand. There are going to be barriers holding you back. So for me, that took the form of coaching, mentorship, which I feel, there's really nothing like it to accelerate and up-level your growth. So that is what I offer the women that I work with now. I think at the end of the day, the inner work, that's 80% of what will ensure that you become successful in your business.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. And I totally agree with you. You nailed just about every, complaint / problem that I think entrepreneurs face, especially in the beginning, is knowing that the inner work is just as important, if not more so, than the outer work, especially when you're just starting out. And, there can be so many distractions. So, it's like a constant barrage of bright and shiny things and do this and do that. And well, maybe if I learn this, then I'll be able, it'll be the magic bullet that will change everything. And yet, that still small voice of your spiritual integrity calls you. How do you stay centered in that and not get distracted? Because I'm sure there's, not just our own inner demons, but lots of other people's opinions out there as well. So how do you balance all of
that? That's a really good question. So thank you for asking me that. I think at the end of the day, I teach what I preach. So what I found useful for myself is it's actually something that I share with the women that I work with now. And I call it's a system that I developed called S.P.A.C.E, and that's an acronym. Because I find that when there's so much noise and distraction, it can feel quite overwhelming and claustrophobic. And that is when it is absolutely essential to make space, to create space, and then take up space for yourself so that you are doing what is in integrity with who you are, instead of getting crowded out by all the noise that's coming at you. So S.P.A.C.E is an acronym. It's based on the feminine principles that I teach. And I'll just share briefly how it works, and I hope it will resonate. Okay. Yeah. So the whole premise of S.P.A.C.E is about getting really clear about your values so that you can stay in integrity with your truth. Because the world of business, it's complex to navigate, as I'm sure, like you have experienced that yourself. And I think the audience who's watching this, they either had the experience or they're thinking of doing it. So the S in S.P.A.C.E, that stands for self-love. And self-love is just absolutely foundational because it's about giving to yourself, filling your cup before you give. And it's all about giving from the overflow. I feel that there's a tendency for women to experience, becoming drained and depleted because they tend to veer towards nurturing other people. And, I feel that in taking care of other people, we tend to forget ourselves.
Exactly.
So all this like self-love is about coming back to what is most loving for yourself, to ensure that when you give, it's not done from a space that carries resentment or bitterness, that there is energetic integrity. And I think as spiritual entrepreneurs, there's already a very clear knowing that you want to be able to give from a space that is clean, that is clear. And that can only happen when you're giving from the overflow and not giving from a space of like being really drained and tired. Also, I'm sure that any business owner will realize, especially if you're just starting out, it's quite a steep climb. There's a lot that you need to learn and to do. And if you've never been an entrepreneur, I mean, I was a school teacher for 10 years, so I was in a very academic setting. It had a lot of structure. And then in the business world, it's completely different. So I found that when all the demons came in, like, oh, should I be doing this? What am I doing wrong, right? All these critical thoughts come in. Nourishing myself with self-love, being kind to myself was so important. And then the P in S.P.A.C.E, that stands for pleasure. Again, in business, there's a lot of pressure, chasing deadlines. There's a lot of stress to put out fresh content when you see so much in the space, right? And there can be an idea that, oh, I need to go after clients, etc. All that can be very overwhelming. And I feel that the antidote is to come from a place of pleasure instead of pressure. So just to say that, like, the first three principles, S, P, and A, it spells out as SPA. And I thought that that was really appropriate because being in business, it's also about looking after your health and your well-being. It's about restoring your energy by turning within, getting really clear about what truly lights you up versus all the big shiny objects, right? People telling you, oh, you should do this, etc. Finding out what truly works for you, and then working and operating from that place. And in this, I'll just give you an example because I'm someone who's highly introverted and I'm not big on social media. And there is just so much pressure to use social media as a vehicle for marketing, for visibility. And I know that it works really well for some of my friends, It doesn't appeal to me. So it's one of those things that would have given me a lot of pressure instead of pleasure. So pleasure is also about learning to stay in your lane, to learn what works for you and what doesn't. And so what I like to say is there are many roads to success. And the journey is just as important as the destination. You want to make sure that the work that you do is pleasurable so that when you actually give and offer your services, your audience, your clients will be able to feel it. So, like, if you're not already clear, I would suggest receiving coaching or mentorship because then the path just becomes a whole lot easier that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then very quickly, authenticity.
Yeah.
Because it's your business, you get to express who you are and be true to who you are. Yet at the same time, there can be a lot of pressure also around putting on a performative mask to show that you're good at what you do. And I find that, when I shifted from an academic world to a business setting, I came to realize that, for example, first impressions count, right? But I find that at the end of the day, sometimes there also isn't integrity in what is being marketed versus what is truly sort of behind the scenes. So authenticity is all about getting clear on what your values are and being confident enough to show up as you are instead of trying to pretend and become somebody that you're not. So that's authenticity. Yeah. As a coach, I found it really important because as a coach, I'm not putting myself out as somebody who is perfect. Like, I've got it all together. Like, my business is always going well. There are ups and downs, peaks and troughs, and it's about learning to navigate it and sharing with my audience some of the challenges that I face and what I'm still doing to keep up leveling and keep upgrading. Yeah, so that's S.P.A.C.E. Very quickly, creativity. I feel that this is where things get really fun. It's about, this is where you get in touch with your intuition, being inspired in all the right ways. You get to decide what it is that you want to create and offer, packages, programs, whatever it is, like sharing your gifts with the world. So this is the birthing of your business. So this is where I take clients through like the planning, development, and implementation of their products or service. And once you have the foundation right, the self-love, the pleasure, the authenticity, then the creative cauldron that you are put in, it's just so rich and so fun. And this is where I really see that the women that I work with, this is where they light up because they finally get to create from a very easeful place. And that brings me to E, the final principle in S.P.A.C.E, because that's what I call easeful beauty. Now, again, in business, right, there is, I think the traditional paradigm is very much about hustling. Even a lot of the marketing that's out there, there's, it's all about creating a sense of scarcity and urgency. Yeah. But when you have the 4 principles in place and you have that clarity about what it is that you're offering, why you're offering it, you don't get swayed by the noise that's out there. You don't get swayed by the response that you receive. And so there's less reactiveness. So easeful beauty, right? When you finally put your offering out there, there is an easefulness and a confidence that comes from the crystal clarity and the coherence that you've already have, and that just causes you to be, I think, less fearful and less reactive.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So as an example, I'll just share this because
I would love that.
Yeah, I was actually terrified when I launched my first summit, which you were on. And it took place only this year. It feels like ages ago now because I I can also see like the progress that I went on. There's the challenge, but there's also a huge reward at the end when you created something that is aligned with who you are.
Yeah.
So at the beginning, I had all these questions, all this self-doubt, fear, worry, it was there. And it was a massive project for me. But what kept me centered was when I grounded myself back in these 5 principles. And, as a form of self-love, I received and I created for myself like a nurturing coaching container. And that provided support, accountability. It enabled me to process all the fears and woundings that came up. And just gave me that space to look at all of them and then carry on. And this is why I really believe in the work that I'm doing, because I've experienced it myself, and I know how precious and how important this can be for women.
Yeah. When you were speaking into the urgency that all of the advertising out there gives us, I would challenge all of our listeners that when they, peruse everything that's out there, notice how they feel inside. Because there are some, and you're one of them, when I see your advertising, it draws you in, and I can feel exactly what you're describing. Versus there's a lot of others out there, and I've coached with some of them even, where there's this urgency all the time, and you can feel it in your body. And it's almost like a sense of panic. And I love what you're teaching women, because that may be a way for some people, but it can be a fast burn. It's like it can wear you out really quickly. So I love that you're helping women find a path that is gentle and easy, and it's not a race. It's an experience. So do you have any other key tools, and you may have alluded to one, that you use to grow your business? Like, what are some of the practical things that you may do that would be easeful and yet have some good returns?
Yeah. And thank you for responding in the way that you did, Kathy, because it also got me to think, that the work that you do as well, right? It's about bringing the feminine back, restoring the feminine. And that means, we're doing away with that old masculine paradigm, very toxic patriarchal of like pushing and, creating that sense of fear and worry that I feel is wrong. So when I think about key tools that I use, I always make sure that they're grounded in feminine principles that are invitational in nature. So for instance, let me think. One of the key tools that I use, honestly, in a lot of the work that I do, because that feeds and nourishes me, is to look for opportunities to collaborate with like-minded women. Now, business, the traditional paradigm is that it's cutthroat, competition, about slaying, like making sure that you're on top. But I feel that in the feminine paradigm, it's about, for example, in the summit that you're creating, like this one, right? It's collaborating with like-minded women. We come together and there is support instead of competition. So I realized that, some of the tools that I use based on the feminine principles requires me to shift away from the old mentality, the old way of doing things. And so what I would encourage and invite the women who are listening to this is to think about what lights them up. Early on you talked about like to sort of sense when they go within, when the marketing is coming at them, what is going on in their bodies.
Exactly.
So I think that's very important. The other thing that I imagine could be very useful as a key tool is sacred boundaries and agreements. I feel that in the work that we're doing, right, we give. At the same time, we also need to receive. Even as we're putting content out there, there can be a tendency to burn out, and then as a result, experience resentment, because give and give, there's a lot of overgiving, but I feel that we as women, we don't always give ourselves permission to receive. And then when when your business expands and your reach grows, right? This is where you may encounter people who are not a good fit, who maybe they feel entitled to keep taking and they don't show any appreciation for the effort that you've put into your content, or they just simply disagree. They're critical of your ideas, and then all these projections come in. So having sacred boundaries and agreements. I say this because I feel that the audience who's listening to this, they're most likely heart-centered, soulful women who want to give. And then what happens when they receive criticism or just, negative feedback? It's important to learn how to hold yourself so that where there are disagreements or where the person is just not the right fit, it's about coming back to knowing what your values are, why it was that you did what you're doing, what your offerings are all about, and staying centered and grounded with that, so that those people who are not the right fit, they will not be able to invade or intrude on your space.
Exactly.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talk about nurturing, you talk about self-care, and I think this may be even beyond, taking a salt bath or going and getting a massage. How would you suggest that entrepreneurs nourish themselves? Do you have like little tricks of the trade that you might want to share with us?
Yeah, the one thing that comes to mind, and it's just one word: celebration.
I love that.
I feel that there often isn't enough of that. And in the business space, because it's always about, okay, the next thing. Once you finish a task, you're like, okay, let's move on to the next thing, because there are all these deadlines, right? And earlier on, I shared that in business, there's often a lot of like, every quarter or every half a year, there are all these projects and events. And then once that's done, it's like, sigh of relief, but let's move on to the next big thing. So what I feel is that when we don't celebrate, when we don't take the time to feed ourselves, to nourish ourselves, and to find small ways to celebrate small wins, because it's not always about the big achievement. So small wins, it can be, whatever it is that lights you up. So being clear about what makes you happy, what brings you joy. It can be just, it can be going for a massage, or it can be just having a meal out with a friend, or taking time to read a good book as a celebration. Essentially, I see celebration as giving yourself permission to acknowledge and validate yourself. Because again, I think one of the common tendencies as women is that we tend to look for external validation and approval, which can be a problem when you put yourself out there and you don't always receive the right feedback. So it's about being able to give yourself a pat on the back. And that's so important. And clearly, I'm not denying the importance of external feedback and validation. And I know that will come. But if you're only seeking for it from the outside and you're not celebrating for yourself, then there's an imbalance and a misalignment there.
Right. This one of the major themes in this whole summit has been that doing this work is a spiritual practice. It will demand spiritual growth. And sometimes it's just important for all of us to go, okay, here's where I am today, but there's where I was, a year ago. And just let ourselves see that, because a lot of times no one else is going to do that but us. So I really love that you said take the time to really notice those things, because it will keep you going. So, piece of advice, if you had something that you just know everyone out there that's thinking about taking the leap needs to know, what's your favorite? What would you share?
Well, first of all, I forgot to mention this, but when I saw the title of your summit, I just thought, wow, that's so beautiful because enchanted, right? That magical quality. And I would also like to echo what you shared just right there. That yes, there can be a lot of challenges in, especially if you're just starting out as a spiritual entrepreneur. But where that growth edge will take you, and what I will say for myself, and I know for a lot of my friends who have been doing this work for a while now, is that the rewards, they're priceless.
Yeah.
And when I think of Enchanted, I think about, the non-tangible qualities, the magical, miraculous moments that land and provide so much value that all the work that you do, you realize and you remember that it's in service, it's in full devotion. And that, yes, we have healthy egos, as we put ourselves out in the world, but it's always realizing that, oh, the work that we're doing, there's this enchantment about it because it's bigger than us.
Yeah, it is.
Having said that, one piece of advice, I feel that it's important to remember that there's a human being behind the business.
Yes.
That you are human. That's an important piece of advice because it's important to watch out for burnout. I've lost count of the number of women I've had conversations with who have experienced doing too much. And it's really because, you have all this passion, all this drive, all this inspiration that sometimes you forget that, oh, you need to rest. And then you keep on pushing and pushing your advice, keep on pushing and pushing yourself. So I feel that this is actually advice that I'm giving to myself as well. Like, I'm not immune to doing too much. And it's easy to overestimate how much you can do, right? So earlier on, at the start of our conversation, we were talking about how if you're here for the long haul, it's important to nourish and take care of yourself so that you stay true to your course.
Yeah.
So that's the piece of advice that I would like to leave the audience with.
Absolutely. So talk to us a little bit about your free gifts and two things, your free gifts and how people can get in and work with you. I'm assuming, they can go to your website, but I want to hear what you have to entice us with.
Sure. Well, I would love to invite your audience to a free global online retreat that I'm hosting at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And the inspiration came because on a personal level, I always find it useful to have a little retreat for myself. So I used to go for retreats, external retreats, and then I would create one for myself. And now I'm hosting it. So it's called Emergence. And it's all about voicing your vision and taking flight. So it's 7 days of feminine practices and workshops. The whole idea is to provide a space for women to nourish themselves. And this takes place during a very busy holiday season. So again, in the business world, right, the marketing mavens would say, oh, it's a bad time to host something because people are going to be so busy. But it's precisely because I feel that this is an important time for women to remember to give themselves some self-love. So this retreat, it mainly focuses on your womb, your sacral chakra, as well as your voice, your throat chakra. So there's the creation and the birthing element. And then after that, giving voice, giving expression to your vision and your dream. So all the practices will be centered around that. Yeah, and the link to register it's available, and all you have to do is click on it.
Awesome.
And yeah, and just to say, right, this is a free offering, but if people purchase lifetime access, there is that option to purchase for life. I'll be gifting them with a sister circle, which I hold every new moon, around the time of the new moon. So that will be an opportunity, I feel, for them to experience and interact with me on a deeper, more intimate level. And then if they're interested, yes, my website has it all. It lists all the services that I provide, and they can go and check it out.
Irene, you're like a breath of fresh air. Thank you. Thank you for bringing all of your space, all of your peace and confidence and everything that you have packed into your offering. You just brought it to this conversation. So I thank you for that. And I know that our audience is going to jump in there and appreciate all that you're doing. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being with us today.
And thank you, Kathy. This has been a real absolute pleasure.